Good morning, everybody. My name is Connor, and I work for Representative Chrissy Houlihan. I want to thank you for joining us today on our IRS/tax season telephone town hall. We're looking forward to taking your questions. At any point during the conversation, if you have a question, please press *3 on your phone. Again, at any point in the conversation, if you have a question, please press *3 on your phone, at which point you'll be transferred to one of Chrissy's staffers who can then take your question and put you in the queue. Again, that is *3. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Congresswoman Houlihan.
Thank you, Connor, and good morning to everyone, and thank you so much for joining our telephone town hall. Before we dive into our topic for the day, I thought I'd talk to you a little bit about the passage yesterday of the American Rescue Plan, which President Biden signed yesterday afternoon. And there are a great many provisions in that piece of legislation that will help us crush the virus. The American Rescue Plan calls for a national vaccination program that includes setting up community vaccination sites, as well as funding for local and state governments. And this, of course, is critical. I am sure, as well as you, have been incredibly frustrated thus far by the vaccine rollout and distribution in our Commonwealth. And it's why I led a number of my fellow Pennsylvanian members of Congress in an effort to get our governor to accelerate the distribution, to consider using our National Guard, which he has agreed to, and to make sure that essential workers like teachers are vaccinated quickly so that we can get our kids back in school. This legislation that we passed will help provide the support needed to get all of that done, and I'll continue to be working with our governor and with the Pennsylvania Department of Health and with the Biden administration to make sure that our community is getting the vaccines and support that we need and that we deserve. The legislation also includes a $1,400 stimulus check to get to that $2,000 that was promised at the end of last year. Families in our community have been clear on how important this money is. It will help with groceries, with rent, and with so much more. And already we're seeing reports of people in Chester and Berks counties expecting to use this check to pay down bills, credit card debt, and their rent. We have increased support for our hardest hit small businesses as well with this legislation, particularly the smallest of our small businesses, with EIDL grants, which is emergency disaster loan grants, with the expansion of the Paycheck Protection Program eligibility, and much more. And on that front, I also helped to secure a 14-day exclusive window for our Paycheck Protection Program applications to come exclusively from small businesses with fewer than 20 employees. And this came about in part because our office was working with congressional leadership and the Biden administration on developing initiatives that would help provide a direct lifeline to our smallest of small businesses. And these are the mom and pop shops on our main streets, the child care facilities that watch our children, the local pharmacies, and so much more. The American Rescue Plan also invests nearly $130 billion in school reopenings, as well as making up for lost learning. I was a teacher before, a chemistry teacher, and I know exactly how important it is to have our kids learning in the classroom. And I want to make sure that we're doing that safely. And that's why I'm working to get increased vaccines to Pennsylvania, as well as voting for bills like this one that will help fund the reopening effort. I'm really proud to have helped pass this crucial piece of legislation at a time when our community and our Commonwealth so desperately need relief. And I'm grateful that it has been signed into law. We are turning a corner and looking not only to beat this virus, but to fully crush it. Now I'd like to turn to our topic of today's telephone town hall, which is tax season. Given the crazy year that everybody has had, I wanted to invite everyone on to speak with an expert and to ask any questions that you might have about this year's taxes and about the IRS. And I'm really, really grateful to have Kate Hunyady on the line with us today. Kate is the Congressional Liaison for the IRS. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to you, Kate.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I really look forward to answering questions that everyone might have today. I know it's a crazy time, so I want to let everyone know, as most people probably are aware, filing season is officially underway as of February 12th. That means we're about a month in and we have a month to go. At this time, there are no plans to extend the filing season or to change the due date for tax returns. That could change, but as of now, we are a go with the April 15th due date. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we do still have a backlog of work from 2019 that includes the processing of 2019 tax returns in many cases. This doesn't mean that you should wait to file for 2020. In fact, I would actually encourage everyone and anyone to file their 2020 tax return as soon as they're ready. Now, I'm not suggesting that you rush, but I wouldn't wait. I also don't recommend waiting, until 2019 is resolved. Part of the reason that I recommend filing sooner rather than later is because if you are entitled to any additional stimulus money from the first or second round of the economic impact payments, then the only way to get it is to file a 2020 tax return and then claim the recovery rebate credit. Essentially, the stimulus payments, the economic impact payments, were actually advance payments of the credit. So at this point, because the 2020 tax year is complete and we now know what the tax information is, we no longer are sending out the advance payments based on 2019, and rather we're using 2020 information. So as far as getting the credit, it's important to know that whether or not you have a filing requirement, or if you typically file or not, the only way to get any stimulus money to which you are entitled at this point is to go ahead and file a 2020 tax return and claim that recovery rebate credit. I do want to mention that this is the guidance only for the first and second rounds of stimulus payments. We actually don't have any official guidance quite yet on the third round, and I can speculate, but but you know what happens when you assume. So I don't want to speak out of turn there. Also, we do have a status of operations webpage at irs.gov, and there you can find the most up-to-date information about where we are kind of in our processing process. We have a handful of FAQs on that page that provide you with expected wait times and or recommended actions for different scenarios that you might be experiencing. Examples would be processing of payments. Maybe you sent a check in to the IRS, but it hasn't been cashed yet, so you can get information there. Requests for forms and a lot of other scenarios as well. Also, I highly recommend that you file your tax return electronically if you can. The reason is because it's the most secure, it's the most accurate, and by far the most efficient way to get your return processed. Also, if you're expecting a refund, then electronic filing allows for the fastest processing of those as well. We do offer some free file options for qualified individuals. Essentially what happens is the IRS partners with third-party tax return preparation software companies, and those companies offer their services for free depending on the circumstances of the individual. You can certainly find out more about those options on irs.gov, and there's even a tool to help you determine which partner might have the best offer for you. We'll match your circumstances to the offers and then let you know which ones we think are the best match for you. One last thing I want to mention before we get to questions is that I know it's frustrating, but there really isn't anything that we can do to speed up the processing of a particular tax return. We are opening mail first come, first serve kind of. We're trying to do it in the order received. And in many cases, the reason why we haven't gotten through a lot of the returns yet is because we need additional information. Sometimes if what we have on the tax return doesn't match what say, for example, what an employer sent in as third-party information, then this will cause an issue with the return, and then we need to take a look at additional information in order to complete the process. So while there isn't anything to be done about speeding up the processing of the return, I would strongly encourage you that if the IRS reaches out to you via correspondence to say, hey, we need to see a copy of your W-2, or we need to see this 1099, for example, that you would get back to the IRS as quickly as possible with whatever that requested information is, so that we can, get your return processed as quickly as we can as well. I think that's it for things I wanted to make sure I discussed. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to take those.
Thank you so much, Kate. And I do think that we have some questions. I'm going to turn it over to Connor, who's in charge of organizing them for us.
Yes, thank you so much. We have a number of questions that were written into our office as well as people on the line, so I just wanted to jump right in. Theodore from East Goshen asked, are unemployment benefits taxable?
Yes, I'm actually glad you asked that, Theodore. That's a great question, and certainly I think a lot of people might be, having unemployment income for the first time this year. So yes, unemployment benefits are taxable. They are meant to replace, normal taxable income. So yes, if you did receive unemployment this year, you should have gotten a 1099-G. That's a form from the state, and it should have the benefits, the amount of benefits you received included on that form to be reported on your tax return.
Perfect, thank you. And a reminder to our callers on the line, press *3 if you have a question. Again, that's *3. Mariah in Reading has a question. I received a 1099-G for unemployment benefits that I never received. What should I do?
Okay, so this is actually a very prevalent issue in several different states, many states in fact, whereby someone fraudulently used someone else's information to claim unemployment benefits, and now that the real person is getting this 1099-G that says they got income that they in fact did not receive. So unfortunately, that issue has to be resolved with the state. So if you are in receipt of a 1099-G for money that you did not receive, then the first step would be to contact the state, let them know so that they can get your account corrected, and then they will send a corrected 1099-G to the IRS. Now, what does this mean in terms of filing your tax return? Well, we are recommending that people only put correct information on their tax return. So if in fact you got a notice that says you had unemployment benefits and you did not, do not include that when you file your tax return, because we want it to be correct, and it may cause a delay in processing the return just until we get that corrected 1099-G from the state, but by all means only report what is correct when you file your tax return.
Connor, I think you might be on mute.
Thank you so much. My apologies. Lindsay wants to know, are stimulus payments taxable?
The stimulus payments are not taxable, so that's a good news thing for you. We had a couple of bad news things, but no, the stimulus payments are not considered part of your taxable income, and you do not have to include them on your tax return.
Perfect, thank you. And it looks like we have a question from Edward in West Grove. Edward, you should be on the line now.
Thank you very much. So I'm trying to understand with the prior administration, when they changed our ability to itemize pretty significantly, one of the items that really impacts us is with regards to job search as well as just the perspective of professional expenditures for, say, a nurse buying scrubs, a construction gentleman needing to buy steel-toed boots. For me, it's having my resume rewritten and potentially going on an interview. Additionally, we were negatively impacted by having a 10,000 maximum on what we can write off as far as personal income tax in addition to property tax. And within Pennsylvania, our school taxes are pretty significant. Property taxes are pretty high. When you have your taxes that come back into your township in addition to your state employment taxes, you can meet that 10K pretty quickly. And it's been a problem for us. And if you could answer that, I'd be like to know what, if anything, we can be doing on it.
So are you, Edward, you're suggesting then that's an unfavorable change per the tax reform, and I know a lot of people feel very similarly to you. I know there's been a lot of discussion about that. Unfortunately, at the IRS, we kind of just enforce the law as it's written. We don't really make decisions about how it's going to be or what the law is going to be. So I do hear you. I can say that there are some changes starting with things like charitable contributions, which as I'm sure you're familiar, those are an itemized deduction, and so when the law changed and more people were qualifying for the standard deduction rather than itemized deductions, they weren't getting the benefit of that. I can say that this year there was a change allowing up to $300 in cash contributions just on the front of the tax return, even if you don't itemize. I know that doesn't help for some of the other particular deductions that you mentioned, but what it might suggest is that we are moving towards changing the law to allow for for more deductions that had been eliminated or made less beneficial by the tax reform in 2018.
And this is Chris.
Go ahead.
And this is Chris. And we'll take a look as well and see what we can do from a policy and a legislative angle to understand this particular issue and how acute it is, and if there's anything that we can be doing to be helpful too. And if it's okay, Connor, maybe we could get this gentleman's information as well and follow up with him.
Yes, absolutely. Edward, we will make sure someone from our team follows up. Our next question today comes from Grant. Grant is in Westchester. I received EIP 1 automatically, but I didn't receive EIP 2. Why?
Okay, so I think I know the answer to this. It's been the answer that this has been the correct answer to this question in every case where I've been able to confirm, but here's what happened. So the first round of economic impact payments, or EIPs, was based on either 2019 tax return information or 2018 tax return information if we didn't have 2019. For the second round of the economic impact payments, we were only able to look at 2019. So if you hadn't yet filed a 2019 return, or if your 2019 return was not yet processed, then we didn't have any information to go on in which to issue that second economic impact payment. So what that meant for some people is that you might have a married couple whereby one spouse was getting the payment and one was not, because maybe the spouse that received the payment has Social Security income. And so we were able to use that information to issue their payment, but the other spouse we have to wait until that 2019 info was processed. And now, because we are past the end of the 2020 tax year, we are looking instead at 2020 tax year information.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's see. We have another written-in question here. This is from Maxwell in. Excuse me. Sorry. This is from Maxwell in Devon. What is the rebate recovery credit, and how do I claim it?
So the recovery rebate credit is essentially a brand new credit that was made into law by the CARES Act, and it is a credit for the 2020 tax year. It has its own line on the Form 1040, the tax return. It's line 30, and there's a worksheet to determine the amount that you might qualify for in the instructions of the 1040. And I think what's worth mentioning, if I may, is I'd like to kind of explain the interplay between the recovery rebate credit and the economic impact payments. I might have touched on this a bit before, but essentially the economic impact payments were advances of that credit amount. So when the credit was created, the goal was to get that money out to people who needed it as quickly as possible. And since we didn't have 2020 tax information yet, we used the 2019 or the 2018 information to estimate what we thought the credit amount would be, and then we would be able to issue our best guess of the credit that someone would be entitled to. So that's kind of how those function. The economic impact payments were essentially just advance payments of that credit. And now that we have the 2020 tax information, we are no longer issuing the EIPs, but rather that money is coming to you in the form of the recovery rebate credit when it is claimed on the tax return.
Thank you. Georgina in Malvern has written in, how can I update my bank account information with the IRS?
So there's only one way to update your bank account information, and that is to file a tax return and include the bank account information when you file. I know that is causing some frustration for people who have changed bank accounts or closed accounts. The reason why, it's a very sensitive issue, bank account information, and we don't warehouse that information, if you will. We don't store that in any of our internal systems because we don't want to pose a greater security risk. So it's kind of a one-time, like a one-shot, if you will. So, you put the information on your tax return, and then we have that on file to issue any refunds that you might be getting, and we're able to use that for the credits or the economic impact payments, but we really don't have a system that would allow someone to access their own information and update the account that way. So in a nutshell, you got to file your tax return and put your bank information on the return.
Thank you so much. And Mariana from Malvern, should I wait to file my 2020 tax return if my 2019 return has not yet been processed?
So no, that's a very simple answer. The answer is no. The 2019 is a separate, the processing of those returns are separate from the processing of the 2020. Not in that there's a different system, but just in that there's no type of interplay between the returns that would mean that you couldn't file 2020 if 2019 wasn't yet filed. So by all means, go ahead and file your 2020 when you're ready to do so. Perfect.
And our last question comes from Sunny in Phoenixville. Sunny says, I received a notice 1444B, stating that I received an economic impact payment, but I did not. What should I do?
This is another great question that I'm glad someone asked, because it's important. So what that notice 1444B, or that was for the second round of payments. The first round, it was a notice 1444. So if either of those notices, if someone received either of those but did not receive a payment, what that means is the IRS thinks that you did get a payment. So those notices are issued based on our records. So if you did not get a payment, then what you need to do is you need to contact the IRS and initiate what we call a refund trace, and that will allow us to track down the payment that we think we sent to find out, what happened to it, and to let us know that it was not received. And so then that way we can correct your account so that it does not reflect that you already got the payment, and then that way you can get any credit that you are entitled to. Otherwise, when you file your tax return and you say, hey, I need this, I'm eligible for this credit, and we compare it to our records, we'll think that you already got it, and we'll say, nope, sorry, you already got it. So again, it's called a payment trace. There's a Form 3911 that you can get on irs.gov, or you can also call and initiate the trace over the phone as well. And also, if you've already gotten your 1444B, don't hesitate to go ahead and start up that trace now, because it does take a few weeks. So I don't want people's credits or refunds to be delayed any longer than they need to be. So don't hesitate to go ahead and start one of those.
Perfect. And I think, Representative Houlihan, that is all the questions we have today.
Excellent. Thank you, Connor, and thank you, Kate, for being with us and for, I think, really robust and good questions from our community. I'm really looking forward to being able to share this information more broadly, and we will be doing that through our newsletter as well as online. If we were unable, which it appears as though we weren't this time around, to get to your call, we will be calling you. A member of our staff will be calling you. And we will also, as I mentioned, be sending a recording of this town hall around to our email list. If for whatever reason you're not on our email list, please do go to houlihan.house.gov to subscribe. That's spelled HOULAHAN.house.gov, and there you're able to subscribe to our email list. As I mentioned, we'll also be posting it on our website, and I really would encourage you please to share this with friends and neighbors as well. As always, my office belongs to us and our community, and if you have any questions, please do feel free to reach out to me and to my team at 202-225-4315. Again, 202-225-4315. Thank you again to Kate, and thank you so much for joining us, and please stay safe and have a good weekend.